What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be doing a quarter-year review with the addition of the 17th game. It took our perfectly separated 4 quarters of a season of 4 games each and turned it into 4 games and a quarter, being a quarter of a season. So I decided to do the first quarter season review at 5 games, and every single one after this will be 4 games in. That being said, this is going to be a little bit of a longer video. So, guys, these take a little bit more work. They take a little bit more research, take a little bit more time. So I'd really appreciate it if you drop the subscribe button, hit the like button to help us beat the YouTube algorithm, and left a comment on your thoughts on the video or just my opinions in general, or let me know your opinions. I love comments. I respond to every single comment. It's why I do this YouTube thing. And I wanted to start talking about what we got from this Jets in the first 5 games. Obviously, we all know that the Jets are going into week 6, 3-2, a feat that I know a lot of Jets fans believed that we could achieve, but not very many people anywhere else believed that the New York Jets could do. There were a lot of people doubting this coaching staff. There was a lot of people doubting these players. There was a lot of people doubting our quarterback situation. And there were a lot of players that we just got that were undervalued. A great example of that is DJ Reed. But we came out, and with a backup quarterback, we were able to come back on the Browns. If it wasn't for 2 mistakes, really, we would have been in that game in Baltimore. Zach Wilson comes back and now is an undefeated quarterback in back-to-back games. So there's a lot of good things going on with the Jets. But over the first 5 games, let's talk about what I've seen offensively, what I like, what I don't like, what I've seen defensively, what I like, what I don't like, what we've seen from this coaching staff, what I like and what I don't like, and just overall what I expect from the New York Jets over the next 4 games. So let's hop right into it. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball. I'm an offensive guy. I used to play quarterback, so that's kind of where I like to focus. And I think every conversation that we're going to have about the offense and the performance of this offense is always going to start and end with the offensive line. I know that obviously we started the first 3 games with Joe Flacco, and the last 2 games we had Zach Wilson, and that's a big deal, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the quarterback position. But I think this team really, really could have been 4-1 if Zach Wilson had started all 5 of our games, but if we had decent offensive line play. We have suffered an unprecedented amount of injuries and just turnover on the offensive line at the tackle positions, and it's led to a lot of bad play from some of the offensive line guys. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. Elijah Vera-Tucker is playing as one of the best, if not the best, offensive linemen straight up in football, and I say that because he's been able to play in the last, I think it's like 6 or 7 games. He's played 4 different positions on the offensive line. He's played everywhere on the offensive line at an NFL level outside of the center, and if the New York Jets asked him to play center, he would do it. You love what you're seeing from Elijah Vera-Tucker, but that was really the only player that was excelling at his role. Connor McGovern, a player that a lot of fans aren't a fan of. I don't hate him. I would like to replace him, but I also don't mind if we keep him. Was playing adequately. Was playing league average center play. Max Mitchell was playing a little bit above what we expected from him as a 4th-round rookie. He played more like a 2nd-round tackle for the Jets, and I really liked the progression we were getting from him. But again, he gets hurt, and then you look at Laken Tomlinson, our big money guard, and he's not performing adequately, but he's had no time to develop any kind of chemistry because he starts off the year, it's going to be George Fant. George Fant goes down, so we then bring in Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown goes down, and then we bring in back Fant. Fant is apparently still hurt, so he goes down, and then he has to play with Elijah Vera-Tucker, and then Elijah Vera-Tucker goes back to the right side so that we can play Dwayne. Not that I want to give excuses, because I'm not that kind of person, but I kind of understand where Laken is coming from in his inability to perform at a high level. And we saw that once he got to play with a guy for an extended amount of time and really build chemistry with him, he looked a lot better with Dwayne Brown in the last game of the season. So The good thing is that we're turning the corner with the offensive line. George Fant is expected to come back relatively soon. Max Mitchell is expected to come back relatively soon. And that doesn't change the fact that we have signed offensive linemen to help fill the hole here. So we do have Mike Remmers, who can be competitive maybe for one of these offensive line spots. Nate Herbig has played a very, very good game at guard, and so that gives us a lot of versatility and a lot of options on the offensive line, and really doing what Buffalo Jet fan says and just playing our best 5 players, and you like to see that. Now I want to move to this wide receiver room. And I really like what I'm seeing overall from the wide receivers. It's the best way to say it is that we're productive, right? We're getting these guys the ball and we're distributing the ball effectively to a lot of guys. We're not seeing one player run away with it, right? A great example of that would be Miami with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill already almost, I think it's 560 receiving yards, which is insane, but he's the only one really getting production, and they have Jalen Waddle there, and they have Gesicki, and they're really not sharing and spreading the ball, so it makes kind of stopping them really easy, because you just focus all of your attention on Tyreek Hill and hope that you have a guy that can cover Jalen Waddle. You saw it with the New York Jets and what we did with Miami. We held Tyreek Hill to under 50 yards. It's the first time he didn't have triple-digit yardage in a game because we knew where they were going with the ball, and obviously they had a backup. The great thing about the New York Jets is that we're spreading the ball around really, really well. We have 4 pass catchers with over 200 yards. Tyler Conklin is 8 yards short of being over 200 yards, so I'm going to count him in there. So we have 5 pass catchers with 200 yards, essentially. You know, Corey Davis has 299, Garrett Wilson has 282, Breece Hall has 213, Elijah Moore has 203, Tyler Conklin 192, Michael Carter has 100. We're really spreading the ball out effectively to all of our pass catchers, and we're getting them involved in the game. And the more that we spread the ball out, because we have effective and really high-level pass catchers, the more difficult it becomes to cover us. If you look at the Miami game, there were 9 different pass catchers in that game, and nobody was targeted more than 4 times. And that's what I want to see from this team. I do want to see some players get highlighted in certain games and get 6, 7, 8, 9 targets, but I don't want it to be the same person every week. I love Garrett Wilson, and I really do think that he can become a wide receiver 1 in this league. But until he's that, we've got a really deep wide receiver room. Let's take advantage of the fact that we have that. And Mike LaFleur has been doing that really, really effectively. Now, where I want to get better in the wide receiver room is outside of Corey Davis, the blocking from the wide receiver room is a little bit lackluster. I'd like to see them run block a little bit more effectively, the wide receivers specifically. And that's really it. They're running their routes really crispy. There's not much to complain about when it comes to the wide receiver room at all. They're doing their jobs effectively. They're doing their jobs well, and I respect them for doing it. Now let's talk about the backfield, and we're going to talk about tight ends, running backs, and quarterbacks. The tight end room, I think, needs to get a little bit more involved. Outside of Tyler Conklin, he's the only tight end with really any kind of reception. CJ Uzomah has 17 receiving yards, and Jeremy Ruckert has 0, and he's only been targeted once. And so I understand the connection that Zach Wilson has with Tyler Conklin, but we spent a lot of money and a lot of assets on this tight end room, and paying CJ Uzomah to be essentially another tackle is not something that I'm super necessarily fond of. I love the fact that he's willing to really be a part of the run game and the pass game and block effectively, but I want to see more 2 tight end sets. I want to see us use these tight ends more effectively. We spent a lot of assets on it, and not just Tyler Conklin. Let's really use these guys, like I said, more effectively. I like tight ends. They're a quarterback's blanket and safety net and safety valve, and so I want to give that to Zach. And right now we're using Tyler Conklin really as a deep threat, and we can use CJ Uzomah and Jeremy Ruckert more as, those safety valves, the throwing it underneath, because Michael Carter and Breece Hall, who we're going to start talking about now, I think should be used more in the long game than as safety valves. Maybe Michael Carter as a safety valve, then have him like really running routes. But Breece Hall, I really want him out in space and making guys miss. And so maybe using him on some actual like route running might be more effective. But it's really hard to complain about what Breece Hall is doing. He is very, very, very much in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And honestly, if he keeps up the performance that he's having, I'm going to find it really, really hard to not give it to him. I don't care what any wide receiver is going to be doing. Breece Hall is not only being effective in the pass game, but he's also being effective in the run game, which is his primary job. And you're not seeing that from any of these guys. And so let's keep feeding Breece the ball. And I love what Michael Carter is doing and willing to set up the plays and be the guy in the goal line to pound the rock through and do those things. But I do want to see him become more effective in running the ball. He hasn't created much yardage when he's been handed the ball off. He's doing relatively well in receiving when you look at it. Michael Carter has 100 receiving yards. But that being said, I think in the last 2 games he has like 40 rushing yards. Ultimately, man, you're a running back, and I know that we've been having struggles with the offensive line, but you've been in this system. This is your second year in the system. I want to see more from him, and that's my complaint with the running back room. But again, I really like what I'm seeing there. And then last but not least, let's talk about the most important position on a football team, the quarterback. So Zach Wilson obviously misses the first 3 games, and we see Joe Flacco. So let's talk about Joe Flacco and his performance. And ultimately, I came away underwhelmed and really disappointed in what we saw from Joe Flacco. I expected more from Joe Flacco. I knew that he was going to be old and less mobile and maybe wasn't going to be able to have the zip or the arm strength that we maybe would have liked or expected from him. But I never thought that his processing of the play and processing of defenses was going to slow down. And that's what happened. I thought the exact opposite was supposed to happen, right? Older veteran quarterbacks process and break down defenses faster. The problem is that their body can't keep up with it. And I thought with our wide receivers, with our running backs, we'd be able to take advantage of that. And I think Mike LaFleur did too. I was just disappointed. Now, at no point in time did I ever want to put Mike White in because I don't like Mike White as the backup quarterback here. I think that that's a problem that we need to fix in the offseason is finding a legitimate long-term backup, a guy that can come in and back Zach up. And I don't think we have that now. But when we look at it and we say, you know, Zach Wilson came back week 4 and he was given a team that was 1-2, I think that's better than anyone could have expected, especially from a 37-year-old backup. He played admirably, but he wasn't set up to really do or perform super well. And I think that started with Mike LaFleur's play calling, but we'll talk about that more in the coaches section of the video. And then Zach comes back week 4, and he's undefeated. And the biggest thing that I liked from what I saw from Zach is that not only did we see growth from year 1 to year 2, we're seeing growth between the games. Between Pittsburgh and the Miami game, you know, he got better in his process. He's got better in his throwing motion. He got better in his footwork. In Pittsburgh, he was missing really, really easy like out routes and like throwing it to the flats and doing these like really easy quarterback things because he wasn't getting his feet set and he wasn't going through his motion. He wasn't doing the things correctly. Going to the Miami game, when we had 2 back-to-back plays, one to Garrett Wilson, one to Breece Hall in the flats. That pass to Breece Hall in the flat, he had almost an exact same play on the opposite side for the Pittsburgh game, and he missed Breece Hall. You look at it in the Miami game, not only did he hit Breece Hall exactly when he was supposed to, and that busted up for like a 79-yard run. So you see him still be adequate and good and actually great in what he likes to do, throwing in between the numbers and throwing it deep downfield. But he's starting to get better in the short to intermediate passes, which is where we really were concerned. You know, you win games in the short and intermediate passing game. That's how you win games. You set up the deep shot by throwing the ball short and intermediate. Not everyone is Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and I'm not putting that onus on Zach Wilson yet. I want you to be Kirk Cousins, and that's what he's showing us. 66% completion percentage in the Miami game. That's excellent. That's exactly what we want. That is league average. And if we can have league average quarterback play this year, not forever from Zach Wilson, but this year, watch out, because the New York Jets can really, really surprise some teams. Now that the offensive line is starting to get healthy, we're starting to build some chemistry between our franchise quarterback and this insanely good wide receiver room, running back room, and tight end room. The Jets are going to put the league on notice offensively. Now let's transition to the defensive side of the ball, which I think has been our better unit overall. Let's talk about the performance that we're seeing from every position group. We're going to do the defensive line as one group, and we're going to do that one last. We're going to work back to front with the defense. So let's start with the safeties. And I think everyone can agree that the first 3 weeks of safety play was absolutely horrendous. It was some of the worst safety play that we saw. LaMarcus Joyner in 3 weeks, according to PFF, every single week ranked either the second worst or dead last worst safety graded in the NFL, and that wasn't good. That was absolutely horrible. And Jordan Whitehead wasn't any better. We brought in Jordan Whitehead to be a force and to really kind of not replace Marcus May, because Marcus May is replaced really by Joyner, but really just to be kind of a force and a net positive in the safety room for the first time in a long time since I guess we had Marcus May and Jamal Adams. Now, Whitehead struggled in those first 3 weeks as well. We were asking him to play a lot of coverage because we didn't really trust our linebackers, and the linebackers were struggling. That middle part of the field, the linebackers and safeties, you saw it turn around against the Pittsburgh game. They figured it out. They're starting to understand the play calling. The communication breakdown fell apart. And I'm going to have to give a big shout out to DJ Reed, because I think him and Quinnen Williams, the leaders of this defense, these are the guys that realistically we should have another captain on defense, because the fact that DJ Reed doesn't have a C is an absolute travesty. But when we look at the safeties in particular, LaMarcus Joyner comes in into week 4 against Pittsburgh and gets, I think it was 2 interceptions and then directly led to another interception. It's absolutely insane, the level of performance jump we saw from LaMarcus Joyner, and then he sustained it, not at that high of a level, but he sustained that level of play. Him and Jordan Whitehead, they sustained that level of play from the Pittsburgh game to the Miami game, and that's a good sign, because that means that maybe we were wrong about LaMarcus Joyner. Maybe we were too soon to give up on Jordan Whitehead. Maybe it was just a communication breakdown. Maybe it was just them getting used to a brand new defensive scheme. And now that they're starting to get it, the players and the plays are starting to be made on defense. We're starting to get turnovers on a regular basis. This is 2 back-to-back games with an interception. And I want to keep that trend going. And let's talk about the linebackers, because I think we're starting to get interceptions and we're starting to get sacks and we're starting to be better on defense, because the linebacker room also took a massive step forward. Outside of Quan Alexander, we were getting pretty bad linebacker play from every single linebacker that was on the field. Now, CJ Mosley is still tackling at an exceptional rate, and he's doing that part of the game that we expect from him really well. But in coverage, what our linebackers are really asked to do in this defensive scheme, he has been struggling. Let's look at Quincy Williams. He was also, again, a tackling machine when he was playing, but again, struggling in coverage. We were seeing that we weren't getting coverage ability from our linebackers at a relatively high level. Quincy goes down and Marcel Harris steps in, and Marcel is actually playing exceptionally well in coverage when we asked him to do it. It's in a very limited basis, and I'm going to talk about this more when I talk about the coaches, but that's because I think we're really calling a defensive style that suits our team much better, and we take advantage of the fact that we have depth on this roster and we can play a matchup game a little bit more on defense. The play calling adjusted in week 4 and in week 5, and the defense performed a lot better. We're going to see more improvement from this linebacker room as time goes on. And when Quincy comes back, I'd be interested to see how the play calling changes. Because, again, we're really only running 2 linebackers. But I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Quan Alexander. He is the probably most underrated signing that we did this offseason because it came in so late at a position of absolute need. And he's by far and away the best player at that position for the New York Jets. And I'm ready to probably, and we'll talk about it in a Quan Alexander video. I'm going to do one just on him because I'm really excited and happy about the production we're getting from him. Now let's talk about probably, in my opinion, the best NFL corner duo in the league, right? They're the best 1-2 in the league, in my opinion. DJ Reed was the most underrated free agent, apparently. The fact that we were able to sign him to 3 years at the contract that he is, and the way and the level that he's performing right now, absolutely insane. He has been locked down, shut down, and it's not just in coverage. He's coming down and just really trying to be an effective tackler and help this team perform. And he's just leading this team, and that's what you want to see. And the thing that I love about the DJ Reed signing is that he is only 25 years old. He's going to turn 26. And so that means that we can keep DJ Reed around for a little bit more than that 3 years. We can keep him around probably for another 2 years after those 3 years and really have a cornerback room set for a long time. DJ Reed, probably, like I said, one of the most underrated signings that we have. And then his partner in Sauce Gardner is absolutely showing, I think, to me and to everybody out there, that he was the best player in this draft by far and away. He should have gone number 1 overall because he is that good at corner. And just like Breece Hall, and I forgot to mention Garrett Wilson is also in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But just like Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner is also in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And if he keeps up this performance, I think he can beat out Devin Lloyd. I think the Jaguars are about to fall apart, and I think the New York Jets are about to take off. And that's a scary combo because Sauce is only getting the game a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more every game. Every game, you see it. Something's clicking every game. He's not making the same mistakes from game to game. You saw that from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4. And the thing with the New York Jets is that when you look at the wide receivers that we've faced outside of week 1, the challenge hasn't gotten really easy. In week 2, he's being asked to cover Amari Cooper. In week 3, he's asked to cover Jamar Chase. In week 4, he's asked to cover Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool and George Pickens. In week 5, he's asked to cover Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. This is going to be the first game since the Ravens game against Green Bay coming up this week where they're really going to be able to take a break as on the cornerbacks, because there's not really a wide receiver in Green Bay that we should be scared about. I love this cornerback duo. They can be our cornerbacks for a long time, and that excites the ever-living bejesus out of me. And now let's talk about the most important position on the defense, and that's the defensive line. And we're getting so much effective play from our defensive linemen. I love to see it. I want to give respect to one player in particular that I think everybody and a lot of people wanted to cut, and they would have been wrong to cut this player because he is playing really, really well, and that is Sheldon Rankins. Sheldon Rankins is absolutely doing his job of being Quinnen Williams' Robin. Quinnen Williams is by far and away the Batman of the defensive line, and Sheldon Rankins is his Robin. He is his right-hand man. He is his sidekick. He is coming in there and being effective and stopping runs and helping fill the gaps that Quinnen Williams is blowing open and all of that stuff. And he is a player that when you're scheming against the New York Jets, you have to pay attention to because he's playing that well. So well, in fact, that PFF ranks him as the 24th ranked interior defensive lineman, and that's absolutely insane to think about. Unfortunately, outside of Quinnen Williams and Sheldon Rankins, we're not really getting much from our interior defensive linemen. Nathan Shepard and Solomon Thomas have been absolutely meh. Really, whenever they're on the field, they're not impacting the game in a positive way ever. And that's disappointing because, one, I didn't want Nathan Shepard on this team, but two, because I kind of believed in Solomon Thomas. And it's unfortunate that he's taken up a roster spot at this point, but you hope that he can turn it around. He was drafted 3rd overall. I don't know. It's unfortunate. But now let's talk about Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams is arguably the best player on this football team. And I want to give that to AVT just because I respect so much of what he's done, but I understand the argument for Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams finally, in his career with the New York Jets, has help on the defensive interior of the line and on the edges. And now that he's not a one-man army, teams can't prioritize him. And even when they are, he's being effective. He is considered, according to PFF, the 6th best interior defensive lineman in the NFL, and I think that that's absolute BS. He should be higher. I think the only player at his position who's better than him right now is Aaron Donald. That's it. That's it. Quinnen Williams is being that disruptive and is that good up the middle. I love what I'm seeing from this kid, and it pains me to say this, but man, is he going to get paid, and the Jets made a mistake by not signing him in the offseason. I wanted to extend Quinnen Williams in the offseason. You give him his big money extension because now he's absolutely super expensive, and honestly, I don't ever want to see Quinnen Williams in not a New York Jets jersey. You hand the man a blank check and say, within reason, you get whatever you want. I want Quinnen Williams on this team more than I want draft picks or anything else. Quinnen Williams helps this team win games. He's absolutely disruptive, and then he gets to stiff arm the crap out of Tyreek Hill after he was disrespectful for this team. You love what you see from Quinnen Williams. Now let's talk about the edge rushers. We're really, really breathing and believing in this edge rusher rotation, and I love the rotation. I'm just not the biggest fan of how the snap counts are breaking down specifically. Now, that comes with me saying because I want to see more of our first-round draft pick in Jermaine Johnson. So I want us to figure out defensively, and this coaching staff to figure out defensively, how can we get Jermaine Johnson more involved? I made a video last week asking to bench Carl Lawson. I am sorry that I said that, Carl Lawson. You are by far and away one of the best players on this edge, and I was wrong to say that. You can't bench Jonathan Franklin Myers. He's absolutely being disruptive and doing his job at an extremely high level on the edge. Michael Clemens, the other rookie that we're seeing, has been incredibly effective, as well as Jermaine Johnson. Bryce Huff should be getting more snaps. This defensive line rotation is doing really, 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 really well. Now, where are some of my disappointments? Really, the only disappointment that I have on this defensive line is Jacob Martin. I believed in Jacob Martin. I have a friend who's a Houston Texans fan, and he sold me up Jacob Martin, and I liked Jacob Martin, especially as a third down rusher. And that's what he's been used at, and he's not been effective. It's come to a point to where I think it's time to bench Jacob Martin and give Bryce Huff that job, because Bryce Huff is really, really effective. And when we run Carl Lawson, Quinnen Williams, and Bryce Huff as a trio to rush the passer, I think they have like an 89% win rate and like pressure rate, which is absolutely insane. It's bonkers. Bryce Huff needs to get more snaps. And like, the thing that I love about this is that while I love Carl Lawson, I'm not in love with that contract that he has. And if Jonathan Franklin Myers, Michael Clemens, Jermaine Johnson, and Bryce Huff continue to play at the levels that they're playing, we legitimately might take the out in Carl Lawson's contract because we just believe in what we have in this edge rusher room. And I'm not mad at that. I love Carl Lawson, and I'm happy that he's a New York Jet. But if these edge rushers continue to play at a high level and they keep developing, man, it might be time to move on from Carl Lawson and go and keep the young guys and give them more snaps, because I think they're earning it. And now let's talk about this coaching staff. I have never not believed in this coaching staff. I believed in this coaching staff every step of the way. Even when we were losing those 2 games that we lost, I wasn't on that bandwagon of being hypercritical of this coaching staff. I understand that there are things that they can do better, and I'll talk about those things because I do think that they can get better. But I also understand that this is a young coaching staff. These are guys that are in the second years of their career. Of all of the coordinators, obviously Brent Boyer is different. He's been like a special teams coordinator for like a million years. But of the important coordinators, like let me say it that way, none of these guys have more than 2.5 years of coordinator or head coach experience. It's going to be funny to say this, but the most experienced person at the job that they have right now is Jeff Ulbrich, because he had that like a half a season or whatever where he was the interim defensive coordinator for Atlanta. Guys, we got to give this coaching staff some time. They are growing just as much as the players are. And ultimately, I think that this coaching staff is the coaching staff that's going to take us to the future and winning football games. Now, does that mean that they can't get better? No, they absolutely can. I think Robert Saleh needs to be a little bit more decisive with clock management. I love some of the mind games and some of the things that he's doing on that end. But, you know, it's a little bit hard to understand what he's doing until you listen to the press conference, and it just seems a little bit off. Like a great example of that was like letting the clock run down to 18 seconds in the Pittsburgh game. Now that after we heard the press conference, now we understand what that happened, but in the moment it seems a little bit weird. So I'd like to see a little bit more decisiveness from our head coach, but ultimately I can't really complain about Robert Saleh. He's not calling the plays, but he has this team coached up well. They know to run up to the ball. A great example of that was the Corey Davis pass that was completed, but they called it incomplete. The players knew, hey, that's all coaching. We got to get up to the line and we got to call the next play. We got to go quick. We got to go quick so that they can't overturn it, so that they can't review it. And they were running up there to get it going. That's coaching. Playing every snap of every second, of every down, of every game till the last whistle is blown, and having 2 comeback games and 1 massive comeback game where we come back from a huge deficit to win in the Cleveland Browns game. That's coaching. That's Robert Saleh motivating this team. And I believe in Robert, and I love what we're seeing from Robert Saleh there. Now let's talk about Mike LaFleur. Mike LaFleur is dialing up an offense that I really, really like. It is really, really, really quarterback friendly. It's not wide receiver, tight end, running back friendly or anything like that. It's actually quite difficult for those guys. But when it comes to the quarterback, it's really coming down to Zach Wilson only having to read like one player. The concepts that we're running and the routes that we're running, excuse me, and the way that we're moving and effectively positioning this team to make these passes is exceptionally well, especially for a young quarterback who's still learning to dissect and break down defenses. I love what I'm seeing from Mike LaFleur. Now, here's my complaints about Mike LaFleur. We're falling into this habit of like sputtering in the end of the second quarter and throughout the entirety of the third quarter, and we're letting teams catch up to us and overtake the lead and do these different things to us, and it's absolutely infuriating. I don't understand it. I don't understand what's going on, why it's going on, what it's doing. It doesn't make sense to me. And so we need to see better play calling, or he's got to work with his positional coaches to make sure that we're getting these players out of that rut. We got to be more effective, and we got to do a better job in the third quarter, and can't just be a fourth quarter Warriors, because at one point in time, we're going to have such a bad third quarter that it doesn't matter how good our fourth quarter is. We're not going to be able to catch up. I'd rather play how we play in the fourth quarter, all 4 quarters of the game, and win football games decisively. And Mike LaFleur needs to be more decisive in the third quarter. Now let's talk about Jeff Ulbrich and what we're seeing from Jeff Ulbrich. In the first 3 games, I was ready to say that he should not be the defensive coordinator at the end of this year. Let him run the entirety of this year. Give us more reasons to fire him. Let's fire him. Let's get Vic Fangio in here. He runs a very similar system to Robert Saleh. They're close friends. Vic is an older head, and he can bring a presence there. And while I'm still not totally giving up on that plan, and I love Vic Fangio, and I'd love to have him as our defensive coordinator, that being said, Jeff Ulbrich has called an incredible game after the first 3 weeks. In the first 3 weeks, we couldn't get the whole defense working together. The whole defense all playing well. We would have a defensive line and cornerback room that played well, but the linebackers and the safety wouldn't play well. We would stop the run effectively, but we couldn't stop the pass effectively. We would stop the pass effectively, but we were really bad on the run. We couldn't get our whole game together. And in week 4 and week 5, we saw the whole game and the whole plan come together, and that's a big part of because of the play calling. And this is what I was talking about before, about when Quincy gets back, what are we going to do, is because I actually really fell in love with the play calling style that Jeff Ulbrich is calling right now. We're playing nickel coverage almost constantly, and the way that we're changing that is if the team brings in another tight end, so if they bring in a second tight end, we're bringing in Will Parks to be that safety hybrid nickel corner hybrid there, and if they bring out a third wide receiver, Michael Carter comes in, and that's absolutely brilliant. That is putting your guys to be and play in a position that's really advantageous to them. Michael Carter is faster, quicker, better change of direction, and great in coverage. He's built to cover wide receivers. Will Parks is bigger, stronger, and taller than Michael Carter II. That being said, he's built to cover tight ends. And so when you use Will Parks to cover tight ends and Michael Carter II to cover wide receivers, you build a defense that's built to really stop the pass effectively. And we did that really, really well against Miami. I love the play call. Now, we can't give up on the run game like we did in Miami, so we have to find a good balance, and I think that comes back down to the linebackers having to be a little bit better at reading and reacting. But how am I going to complain? Quan Alexander is dropping huge hits, I think in 3 back-to-back games. C.J. Mosley is tackling at an exceptionally high rate again. So, again, there's a little things that we got to see different in the defensive play calling and all of that stuff, but it's really, really good to see that from our team. What do I expect over the next 4 games? Well, the schedule isn't super easy for the New York Jets. We play at Green Bay, we play at the Broncos, we get a respite and get to play the New England Patriots at home. That's a real nice breather. And then right before the bye, we got to play the Buffalo Bills. So what am I expecting over the next 4 games and the next quarter of our season? Honestly, I think we can go 3-1 in this stretch of October and then the last game of November. I really think that Green Bay is weak, and they lost to a Giants team that their whole offensive play calling is run the ball with Saquon on first, run the ball with Saquon on second, throw the ball to Saquon on third. If that doesn't work, punt it, rinse, repeat. And that's how they beat him. We actually have weapons, wide receiver weapons on our team. We actually have 2 really good running backs. We have a much better quarterback. We can beat that team. And on the offensive side of Green Bay, outside of Aaron Rodgers, they don't have much. Aaron Jones is great. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but the offensive line is struggling, and they should struggle against our defensive line. They don't have wide receivers that I'm worried about, especially when we have the best cornerback duos in the league. Again, we should be able to beat Green Bay. Denver is a dumpster fire right now. They're trying to figure out what the heck is going wrong. Even though playing at Mile High is difficult, Denver is making every team that they play against really, really difficult. I think we can beat Russ, honestly, in Denver. And we all know what I think about New England. I think New England is probably one of the worst teams in the league. They're going to be in contention for the number 1 overall pick, in my opinion. And the fact that they put up 29 on the Detroit Lions doesn't really scare me because it's the Detroit Lions. I expect that we're going to put up 29 on the Detroit Lions when we play them later in the year. And then the Buffalo Bills are the Buffalo Bills. I just hope to not get blown out in that game. And that's kind of how I look at this going forward and my expectations over the next 4 games. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below about the last 5 games and the next 4 games and what we're doing and what we're seeing from this team. I would really, really appreciate it. And last but not least, go Jets.